afternoon. I thought I'd start today with a little bit of a history lesson. If you're not aware, the history that we have with electronic communication dates back to the mid-1960s. ARPA came out with the first online messaging tool on ARPANET. ARPA is the Advanced Research Projects Agency, division of the Department of Defense here in the United States. It's now known as DARPA. I actually got a shout out in the keynote yesterday. Still exists, still does a lot of really cool research and, newfangled digitization, stuff like that. In the mid-1960s, they were able to connect about 20 nodes across the country, universities, government nodes as well, but there were about 100 or so users. It wasn't until 1971, a guy named Ray Tomlinson, who worked for a contractor underneath ARPA, built the first concept for a mailbox. This is essentially the beginning of email. It wasn't until 1991 that Microsoft gave us Windows Mail, or Microsoft Mail, both for Windows and for Mac. And that essentially brought email to the masses, to all of us. And it wasn't until 1997, believe it or not, that we got Outlook as we know it today. Prior to that, it was Mail, it was Calendar, it was Contacts. It was brought together in 97 as part of the Office 97 rollout as Outlook. So it took 20 years from government email to practical consumer email to another 6 years for us to get it for the enterprise in a clean package that we all know today. But a new paradigm is upon us. Microsoft Teams rolled out somewhat by surprise in 2016. Maybe not so much by surprise. Slack had been out for 3 years, and Microsoft had to make a decision, buy it or make a version of it themselves, and they decided to come out with Teams. Teams has seen some incredible growth. I think the stats out there is that this is the most quickly adopted application or platform in Microsoft history. As of June, we had 13 plus million daily active users. I really like that daily active users metric. You'll hear a lot of monthly active usage at conferences like this. I actually hate that metric. If Teams is meant to take away time or be a supplement to email, coming into Teams for once a month does not really get me much value. 13 million plus is huge. Microsoft pushed this out publicly in June, probably half just to say, look at us, and half to say, we surpassed Slack, and that was great. That being said, Office just recently broke 200 million daily active users. And let's just assume that they all have an inbox. That's not a conservative estimate, but that being said, you still have a number of Exchange on-prem folks out there. So hundreds of millions of inboxes are out there compared to Teams at 13 million. I'm not saying that to poke at Teams and say, you got work to do. I'm saying that because we are still in the infancy of this new paradigm of chat-based hub of all work communication styles. It means that we have an opportunity to actually make people use this stuff the right way. Email has now been around for 50 years, and that's 50 years of bad etiquette practices that I'm sure you can relate to. The biggest one being, I'm sure we can all relate to the reply all mistake. One of the places I worked at one point was about 15,000 users, and somebody sent out to a distribution list of a few thousand of those. We were Exchange on-prem. The number of reply alls that were, please remove me from this distribution, please remove me from this distribution, please stop replying all, took down the network for a day. So this means that we have an opportunity to avoid this. We can look back, learn lessons from the email rollout of the past half century, and push this persistent chat paradigm into a good place. You are all stewards and have this opportunity to do something really good. So essentially, my point is that poor business etiquette is not new, but we have the benefit of hindsight to make sure that we can try to push us all into a better place. And that's why about a year ago I put together an etiquette guide for Microsoft Teams. I've spent a lot of time at this point in Microsoft Teams, got to know how to use it, and put together this guide thanks to both my employer, AtBot, and a partnership with AvePoint. And I want to say special thanks to Chris Webb, who's up here in the front. If you ever post to the Microsoft tech community, Chris Webb, 50% of the time is the one that gets back to you. We were able to get this out, and essentially, that's why we're here today. I'm going to go through basically a presentation version of this ebook. The ebook you can get right now. It's been out for a while. We'll be updating it hopefully this week with some of the new features that came out within Microsoft Teams as of yesterday. My name is Matt Wade. I'm the VP of Client Engagement for a product called AtBot. We build the no-code chatbot solution for the Microsoft Cloud. Microsoft MVP, all of that means that I don't work for Microsoft, so I can have an opinion. I will share those with you. I am also live tweeting this, so if you want to follow the hashtag BRK1036, even if you're not on Twitter, you can just search hashtag BRK1036. I will be pushing out resources that I bring up here, so you have them. You can get my slides at the end of the session on the app, but I'm also going to have a link to some updates that are not in the system as of last night. So you'll get a more up-to-date version at the end. Most people know me from my infographics, if you know me at all, but this one probably the most. This is the periodic table of Office 365. This is a joint project that I work on with a colleague of mine in Denmark named Niels Johansson. I did the graphic work on it, and he was the, black magic developer genius and was able to make this interactive. We have 12 plus languages. Click on any one of the tabs or the tiles here. You'll get a description written by somebody well known in the field, well respected, and take some time to check that out if you'd like. So, as this is an ebook, this session is split up into chapters. First being, let's talk about what Teams is. How many of you have moved on to Teams, like actually using it internally at your organization? Okay, great. How many of you are not in at all, just still learning? Okay, you're getting hit with a huge fire hose this week. That's great. This should hopefully give you an idea of how best to use it. This is one man's opinion. Well, two, I guess. You validated some of my concepts. So this is two men's opinions, but it's a good starting point. If it doesn't work for you, modify it. Do whatever you'd like. The ebook is yours to use. It's free. No worries there. But let's talk about what Teams is. The biggest thing about Teams is you're talking about a communication tool, right? It's a new chat-based, topic-organized communication tool that happens to bring in your files through SharePoint, file editing through Office. I can't say Office Online anymore. They have changed the branding to just Office. It's whether you're in the web or if you're on the desktop app. Meeting and conferencing, huge deal. Presence, status, fully native to mobile. One of the best rollouts I think Microsoft has ever had of an application or a platform. Came out of nowhere, and oh, by the way, it's available for 4 platforms. Not Windows Phone, though. And then third-party connectors. The integrations are wild. Really, really, really useful. But let's put that in a simpler format. We're basically taking all of this and smushing it in to one purple burrito. So let's get started with Chapter 1, General Tips. The first thing I want to recommend to everybody is please download the apps. I love the fact that the web-based version of Teams supports almost all the features that the client application supports. Not fully there, but almost. That's especially notable for meetings. You do not have to download a plugin to get a meeting to start, only for you to get into the meeting 12 minutes late because you had to get the WebEx download to get into Chrome, and then Chrome crashed on you and all of that kind of stuff. Really, really good tools. Second, personalize your notifications. A lot of options here. Too many. Kind of the reason I use an iPhone is because I don't want to have to work for the phone and make it perfect. But I also give up my option to customize. That's sort of the difference between an iOS and the Android device. Well, in the case of Microsoft Teams, it's sort of the Android device. You have a lot of options here, so play with them, personalize them. A few little tips I think are important. First off, you can actually change channel notifications now, and that's one of the great things about Teams. Right now, when you receive an email, every email is equal, whether it's some spam crap that you're getting and you can't stand, or if it's something from your CEO. With Teams, everything is categorized and organized by topic. If you're not interested in the marketing channel, you can ignore that, hide it. If somebody mentions you in there, great. That's the one time you needed to go there. Versus with email, you could have gotten 15 emails from the marketing team. You can also turn off notifications on specific conversations. And you can also see your unread messages with one of those commands at the top bar. I don't use the commands very much, but I know a lot of people, especially who are developers, really like those commands through the search bar, so check that out. Also, on mobile, quiet hours lets you split that whole work and life experience. Really easy to set this up and basically turn off your notifications every night, every weekend, however you want to set it up. Not a lot of people know about that, and I think that's extremely useful. Another important part is when you create a team, you're getting a whole online workspace. This is another infographic that I put out a couple years ago now at this point, and I feel like I I don't get paid enough at this point to make the updates and how often things change. These items here, when you create a team, you're going to get a SharePoint site in the background, SharePoint team site, online. You're going to get a stream video portal. You're going to get some connection to Power BI for the time being, although that's changing a bit. You'll get a planner plan. You'll get a OneNote notebook in that SharePoint site. And you're also going to get some forms integration. But that's just one type of Office 365 group. This is probably one of the hardest adoption things to deal with, is trying to train people on the difference between groups, teams, Yammer, Outlook, all these different things. And I'm hopeful this might be able to help you a little bit. Okay, so let's jump into conversations. First off, if you want to get somebody's attention, do not assume that if you just put a post out into a channel someplace and you say FYI that anybody saw it. This would be like not putting a name in a to-field in an email. Make sure to put that in there. Make sure to give those people what they deserve. Another nice thing is if you have long names or you just want to be more informal, you can actually just type the name in, press enter, and start pressing backspace, and it'll clear that out. This is useful for larger organizations. I consulted for a transnational corporation where they put the country, department, and something else in their name, and the name was long enough that it actually wrapped in Microsoft Teams. So being able to backspace was extremely helpful. Don't @mention the team or channel unless you really need to. This is a real screenshot. If you're interested, you can keep up with what's going on in Office 365 through the Collab 365 community. This is one of those communities. So 921 people don't need a notification. I don't care how important you are. And this is a pet peeve of mine. Use subject lines. If you weren't aware, you can actually get a subject line by pressing that little format A on the bottom left. Please do so. It's very hard to find information if you're just scrolling through the persistent history of the channel or the team. And with those subject lines, you're going to be able to see a lot more. Assume, at least from my perspective, that a message in a channel in Teams @mentioned at you has the same urgency as an email. And if you're sending that message to somebody, don't expect an immediate response. It might take you a couple days to get back to you, but they're essentially the same. I also like to point out that I don't think that the thumbs up button is really meant for sentiment. This isn't Facebook. This isn't your friend's, baby shower photos that you're liking. This is a really good opportunity for acknowledgement. Many of us point out the I hate email, I get too much email. A lot of that is just the typical, okay, got it, thanks, great, or even just a thumbs up icon. This is that opportunity to clean house and start acknowledging using that. That being said, when reactions came out, these can be for sentiment. The first thing I hear from any organization moving from Slack is, how come I don't get all the emojis? I can't party parrot, therefore I can't get my work done. You're only going to have 6. They should look familiar. These are the exact same ones on Facebook. Everybody knows how to use Facebook. My grandma knows how to use, well, my grandma's dead, never mind. This is the one that I do want, though. I think we could all make use of a Robert Downey Jr. eye roll. But we don't deserve that. We can't have nice things. Okay, next is match your meme and GIF usage. If I just offended a third of you because I said GIF, I apologize. But do be smart about how you're going to use the stickers, the memes, and all of this stuff. They are very fun. They take up a lot of space. So if you get into a meme war, which you will, because once somebody goes, they are obviously the funniest person ever. But you have a funnier retort because you're the funniest person ever. And you are, of course. That other person is terrible. That becomes a really long back and forth of images, but all I wanted was that one little line of text that was important to me. So please beware of how you do that. This is another one that's important to me. Don't mix up start a new conversation with reply. This will be fixed soon. In fact, it works really well on the mobile app. But for the time being, train your users, your colleagues, whoever you're working with, to please do not mix those up. If you start a new conversation as a reply, it can get real dicey real quick. It's really hard to do a bunch of deletes, especially if people are all around, working remotely. External guests is a great feature in Microsoft Teams, but be sure that everybody knows that they're there so that you're not bad-mouthing your vendor or your client and didn't know it. It's also smart because those people might need help. They may not be familiar with Teams. They might be coming in from the outside. You don't need to have an Office 365 account to be a guest in Teams. So being able to provide some assistance can be useful. This is a huge one for me. How many of you have ever sent an email to Microsoft Teams before? Okay. When you receive an email and there is a response expected, but you have to debate about it or dicker internally about it, you can actually grab an email address that's channel specific, forward that email to the channel, and you now have a conversation where you can dicker about it inside there first. So no mistaken reply alls that included the client or the vendor, and no embarrassing back and forths that get revealed because somebody didn't delete the internal conversation before you send it. This keeps it internal. And when you're done, the one person that's actually in charge and owns the ending process of closing out with whoever you're communicating with can go back into email, do the reply all, and say, we're great with it, except we want you to change this item on line 2. But we figured that out in Teams instead. This is a session unto itself, is being a good team owner. I have some resources at the end of this session that you can get to, but if you're going to be a team owner, it's actually more responsibility, I think, than being a good SharePoint owner, which has been pretty responsible, or necessary on that. So know what you have know what you have available to you, use them well, and manage the team, and don't just do it as a, oh, it'll be fine. There's bigger things into it. Channels. So let's jump into how channels work. The big one I want to point out here is not to change the name of a channel unless you all agree to it ahead of time. Does anybody here know what happens in the back end when you change a channel name? Speak up. Okay, the takeaway there is that it's going to rename some stuff, okay, which is fair. The one thing it doesn't do is it doesn't rename the folder that's associated to that channel in SharePoint. So if I have a channel that's called Project X and I want to change it to Project Y, I can do that. It's not going to change the folder name in SharePoint. It's still going to say Project X. I then have the, I'm really tempted to change that to Project Y. I just broke the link. Now, if you go back and rename it to Project X, don't worry, you can actually fix it. It's fine. But that folder name is going to be the old one forever, unless something is fixed in the future. That is an important one, and I think that's something to always point out here. But you can also drop emoji into your channel names, which I think is really helpful for organizing things. I would generally recommend create the channel first, then rename it, because you know how to rename it. You know what you're doing. You know the impact. And you'll have the emoji there, mainly because I don't really care to see Unicodes in a URL for a SharePoint site. That being said, you'll notice the order goes out of order because emoji have their own order. So they are Unicode characters, but they're not A through Z. And a big takeaway on channels is that I don't think that you need as many channels as you think you do. If you start breaking 15, 20 channels, that's a lot of stuff to keep track of. That's a lot of channels to remind myself, I don't care about half of those. It's these half that I care about most. But as that gets longer, your team's listing starts to get really long. You're going to have to do a bunch of scrolling. It's not good. I would definitely say only create channels when you absolutely think that you do. And to add on to that message earlier about memes and GIFs, I would generally keep a water cooler space or a miscellaneous space for the fun stuff, for memes, GIFs, jokes, things like that. Let people be human. Let them be social. That's our entire roles in our lives is to be social beings. But tell them to keep it where it belongs so that you're not fishing through where you're trying to get actual information and you have to fumble through a bunch of different memes and GIFs. Keep the general channel for announcements. At this point, you can't change the general channel. Can't change the name, can't delete it. So you might as well use it. Really great for announcements, central information. I also think you can't remove yourself from the general channel. I think you follow it regardless. So you might as well, you have a captive audience, you might as well use it. And the big takeaway on this section is to create channels only when you really need them. But probably the most important one that everybody wants to know about from this week, private channels are here. The big takeaways on private channels. First, every person that's a member of the private channel is also a member of the team. A private channel permission set is a subset of a team. 2, team owners are not necessarily private channel owners, which means they can't see the content if they're not also a PC owner. They see that the channel exists, and they can see the description of it, basically the metadata. Third, and probably the biggest, is that the files live in a separate SharePoint site collection. And you may say, that doesn't make any sense, there's an easier way to do it. And I'm going to come back and say, no, there's not. And we can talk about it afterwards. But if you want more information, I put a blog out last night with all of the information you need to know about private channels. I know a lot of us have been waiting for this for a long time. They're here. With great power comes great responsibility, right? But of course, we needed to see this. This is the most popular request for any feature in Microsoft Teams. All right, let's jump into files quick. First, let's continue our quest for the last 10 years of single source of truth. Don't attach files to emails. Send links to files so you just have that one version that matters. Teams makes this super simple. Upload your files into the Files tab, upload it to SharePoint, upload it through the OneDrive sync client, all these different ways to do it. And when you want to reference them in your conversations, put links into the conversation, and it'll link right back to those files. The size limit, 100 gigs as of yesterday. It was 15. At this point, I don't know why we would ever need something bigger than 100. I guess it's possible. When it comes to folders, which Teams kind of shot the whole metadata is better than folders argument in the foot when the information architecture was set up in SharePoint for Teams. Folders are now the primary way to organize documents in SharePoint again, thanks to Microsoft Teams. Now you can use metadata, and the new file experience in Teams does support metadata, but that's only coming now. When you want to store your files in folders, stick to 3 levels of folders deep. There's 2 reasons for this, 2 best practice reasons for this. First, the deeper you get, the more of a sort of Google Maps directions map you need to get anywhere if you're new or you don't know your way around. 3 folders makes it a lot easier to find stuff. The second reason is there's actually a character limit to the URL. So as you have really long folder names or really long file names, you're eventually going to hit that. Now you can always browse to it and click, 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 click. But if you want to share a link, it could die, and that's bad. You don't want that to happen. So these are 2 good reasons to not use too many folders when it comes to organizing your files. The real beauty of SharePoint these days is going to be the ability to have all these files locally on your desktop or on your mobile devices, especially with files on demand. So you still have pointers to all those files, but you don't necessarily fill up your entire device. So use OneDrive. Take some time to figure out the messaging of how to tell people what is OneDrive and what is SharePoint and why are they 2 different names and that kind of stuff. I do have some infographics on there, the SharePoint versus OneDrive experience. Tried to simplify that to the best of my ability, but if you have better ideas, use those internally. But if people aren't using the OneDrive sync client, they're really missing out. And if you really like SharePoint, you can still go back to SharePoint and get that information, see those files, see the metadata, use pages, create other document libraries, a whole bunch of different stuff, all the full power of SharePoint, and you can bring that into Microsoft Teams now, especially with the tabs for pages and for document libraries and things like that. This slide is a little bit less relevant now that we have private channels, but you can use SharePoint to permission protect folders or even do object level permissions on files in SharePoint. It's still SharePoint, still works the same way. I wouldn't recommend it. The whole point of Teams was to simplify all of this stuff. I'm sure I'm not the only one over the last 10 or 15 years who people have said, I hate SharePoint. Why does it look like SharePoint? Can I make it not look like SharePoint? I can't find anything. How do I know who has access to this file? That whole permissions thing was a nightmare in SharePoint. Teams came out and gave us this, if you have access to the team, you have access to everything solution. Simplified it, made it much easier to deal with and administer. Made SharePoint look not like SharePoint. It was great. We took this great file tool that nobody seemed to like, and kind of like when you give a dog its medicine in cheese, we took that file experience, wrapped it up in some purple cheese, and we fed it to our users. They liked it. But you can still use these features, but try not to. Convince yourself you have to before you make any sort of idle decisions on this just seems easier. It's not necessarily going to be easier. So that brings me to private chat. Microsoft calls it group chat. I have no idea why. The word group is stolen. We don't have that in the English language any longer in this industry. So I like to stick with private chat. When you are talking to people in private chat, This is really either it's really important or it's really urgent, but it's never in the middle. The intern ordering your sandwich for lunch is really urgent, but not very important. The CEO might want some information that's due in 2 months. That's really important, but not urgent. The rest of the stuff kind of fits into channels and conversations, but this is essentially where you're going to get that kind of information. And when it comes to the urgency here, compare this to Skype. If somebody were to ping you and say, I got a question, decide for yourself, is that urgent or important? Can I add it to my task list and get back to them? It's also similar to like getting a text message. It's not like getting an email. But do yourself a favor and avoid the temptation to do all of your work in private chat. I've consulted now for a few organizations that we set up this great information architecture for teams, channels, all set up great, and they had come from Slack, and they just went straight to private chat. And they regret it now because file sharing is a nightmare compared to what you would have had with SharePoint. The OneDrive experience is great, but not exactly the solution. So as you start getting into work-related conversations, remind yourself to go into the transparent zone where when you add somebody new, they can see all of that past information in those teams versus in chat. Keep member count low for the exact same reason. If you start having 25, 30 person private chats, you're probably doing work. And if you're doing work, it really shouldn't be in private chat. It really should be in the team. And note that new members have access to certain amounts of previous information or conversation in those chats. You can add multiple people. You can rename a private chat, really kind of handy. But if you've been bad-mouthing John 3 days ago, and you're going to bring John into the conversation to get an answer to a question on something, probably make sure that he only sees moving forward, that kind of thing. Be respectful of people's status. I'm sure most of these are not new ideas to you, but that bottom right one there, be very aware of that. When you see a green circle with a green check mark, that means the person's out of office, but they're actually online. Well, anytime you have the app open on your phone and you haven't closed it, you're still online. So just because I'm on vacation and I happen to have the app open doesn't mean that my inbox is open for you to be sending messages to me. Another quick tip is when you are out of the office, your out of office message from Outlook is also shown in Teams. So don't say thank you for your email any longer. Say thank you for your message. And don't assume you have privacy. In a conference like this, most of you are probably IT professionals. You know the administrator experience, but for those of you who aren't, the IT person in your organization is kind of a big deal. I mean, we're all just, kind of a big deal. But they have access to a lot of stuff. And don't assume that you have privacy. You shouldn't assume that that's any different than when email systems came out or anything like that. Now, one favorite topic for me, because I work in the bot space, check out some of those apps that are out there. Specifically, I like some of these bots here. The WhoBot, Poly are both really good. I work on AtBot, and if you are looking for any sort of possibility for doing or just helping when it comes to Teams adoption, we have a knowledge base connected to this bot, so if you install it, you are able to ask any sort of Teams-related help question. How do I do this? How do I do that? And it will try to supply you the best practice. It'll link you back a lot to this, this guide here that I'm sort of building this presentation off of. And you can also attach Power Automate, Microsoft Flow, to this and actually kick off processes for free using Power Automate and the workflow tool that's in there. When it comes to meetings and calls, this is Skype wrapped up in Teams, essentially, the features. When you are going to schedule meetings, you are using your Exchange calendar, your Outlook calendar. It's all the same. But when you do organize and schedule meetings in Teams, you have some really great features. For example, you can have a meeting in a channel in a team, which means that any conversation that you have related to that meeting is saved in the channel. So if somebody's presenting and you don't want to bother the rest of the group, you can be typing back and forth. And all of that information is saved, which is really, really helpful. This is what it looks like in Teams. So that big purple banner there with the faces shows you who's in there, how long it's been going. If you have a recurring meeting, it'll show you each time that the appointment happened, who was in it, how long it took, and that chat is going to persist there. You'll have access to that moving forward. Very, very useful. And it's 2019. When your internet connection or just the experience supports it, use video. If you have an E5 license, Stream will actually auto-transcribe, which is really, really useful. One from an accessibility standpoint, but also from a knowledge standpoint. All the information that people are talking about in that meeting are now available. Now that's the marketing speak. You will have to worry about people feeling big brothery, and what can I say now because the system is listening, and your search indexes are going to get slightly bloated, probably with random jokes that people throw in back and forth, the verbal version of the GIF war. But it is very useful. When it comes to being in your meetings, please stay on mute when you're not talking. How many of you have heard dogs whimper in the background needing to go out to pee? I heard a toilet flush once, swear to God. Makes you wonder what device were they using. And if you're sharing your screen, especially web pages, zoom in. If you think it's big enough, it's not big enough. Keep going up. On all devices, you're doing controller command plus or minus for all browsers. Very quick, most websites are responsive, you should be perfectly fine. But assume that people can't see what you think that they can see. So I'm going to wrap up here with some resources moving forward, and to also say, you are stewards now of bringing in a new paradigm nirvana. So work on that. Try your best to share some best practices here. You can run with this ebook as a nice starting point. You can customize it. You can steal the information. I don't care. Go for it. Make it right for your organization. And assume that your newcomers to Teams, even if they've been using it for a couple years, that they have not actually gotten to the point of thinking about this. They're just running with it. I just have to get work done. That's not really how it works. Same way that I just have to drive from here to the airport, I had to get a license to do that. This is kind of important too. And this information is really good for discussing during company retreats. I have been involved in way too many trust falls that could have been, how do we do work kind of interactions. So look at this as an opportunity and run with it that way. So this book, like I mentioned, is available online. And it's a really great thing to put as a tab in your Teams, right? So you can make this as a nice little starting compact saying, hey, we agree that we're going to follow these rules. And here's the link. And we can add it as our etiquette or our governance, although nobody likes that word in real practice, so I probably wouldn't use that. But you can add it right to the top there using the website tab. We have a Gov version of this as well, if you happen to be in a Gov tenant, G135, because the government experience is a tad neutered compared to what the rest of us get in commercial, so keep that in mind. And just some shameless self-promotion. I'd mentioned that I work on chatbots. Microsoft Teams is the home for chatbots in the Microsoft Cloud. If you're interested in looking at how to build a chatbot from scratch, you can do it completely no code these days. I'm going to be talking about that tomorrow. And then on Friday morning, if you feel that you are always drinking from a fire hose and trying to stay up to date with Office 365. And at this point on Tuesday at Microsoft Ignite, if you don't think that, I don't know where you've been the last day. Please feel free to sign up. Actually, the waitlist is full for this, but it's Friday morning at 9. And I'll bet there's going to be a lot of no-shows. Because what happens Thursday night? The celebration, right, exactly. So feel free to stop by. It's in one of the unconference rooms over in the hub. And great opportunity to team up with other people, discuss, actually, share some best practices, and we're going to be doing a bunch of back and forth with some really cool facilitators as well, who you've probably seen online bunch back in the day. So, like I mentioned, all the resources that I've covered today are on Twitter. So feel free to follow me or search for that hashtag BRK1036, and you'll find all the information. I also accept all LinkedIn invites, so feel free with that. And if you want the handout for this, you can hit that URL on the right side. Again, it's in the app, but you can get a more up-to-date version with some more information through there. So at this point, I'm going to open it up for questions. Yeah.
Yeah, so in regards to, from an etiquette standpoint, on the formality of
conversation structure for conversations themselves. Obviously, people have some familiarity with email to being more formal and chat being informal.
Yep.
Where on that spectrum do conversations lie, and are users comfortable with that yet? I mean,
Yeah, fair question. So I think generally speaking, email is a much more formal style of communication. You actually have to like press new and open up an email and start typing, and you have a signature on it, you know, all that kind of stuff. Chat is going to be significantly less formal. That being said, I think that your wording, you know, it's not your buddy, and it's not, you know, you're not out to having a good time on a Saturday night type of thing, so I definitely wouldn't type the same way I would if I was chatting with a friend. But I think that moving forward, people do understand that chat is a little bit more informal and that you can get away with that type of informality. I wouldn't assume that you have to be super email formal, but if that's your culture, that's legitimate. And if that's what you agree that your culture is, or it just seems to be apparent that's the way it is, I would just match it there and assume that, yeah, email is going to be more formal, but maybe Teams needs to be just as formal. But both need to be appropriate, yeah, and at the base, that's true. Yeah.
Hey, so I've had private channels in my tenant for several months now.
Ooh.
Something that, we don't have it released to the entire tenant. We just scoped it for now through policies, but I don't, so people ask me, hey, can I be enabled for private channels? And I'll change their policy, fine. They'll ask me, or I'll have leadership ask me, what's the use case? I don't really have a good one to tell them, especially because of the apps and bots that are not available in private channels.
Yeah.
And especially when I have to tell them that, you know, the members of the private channel need to be in the team itself anyway. So if you wanted to have HR in the private channel, the rest of the team knows that they're in the overall team itself anyway. You know, like, so what have you seen in terms of how private channels are being used, and like what are the use cases that you would, you know, would point people to?
Yeah, sure. So the use cases for private channels, I'm just going to boil it down to something I think is just pretty simple. It's essentially going to be we want executives to be able to have a conversation in this team at the same time as the team, you know, exists, and be able to discuss sensitive issues. And a lot of times you'll see finance as a reference. We want to be able to talk about money, but we don't want everybody to know about it. I'm going to show you real quick. I think this is over here. There we go. Let me bring it up first because I can't do the. So this is just the link to the blog post that I mentioned earlier. And if I bring this over and then maximize it, I have a listing here of all of the private channels details. Where's my mouse? There we go. On use cases, especially in the video, I recorded a video to go along with this, that it always comes down to the people who are the most important that have access to more sensitive information don't want to have to put extra work in to keep that stuff sensitive. I think that's probably a fair generalization. And sure, I guess they deserve that, right? Because they're important enough and they're paid enough, but at the same time, if you're going to use something, you should be able to use it the right way. That's the reason that private channels has been a big deal. And that's also the reason why the files aspect of this is in a new SharePoint site. You could have a new document library or a new folder made in the SharePoint site that already exists for the team, but then the team owner, who is likely not the executive or the person who actually wants that separation of information, they shouldn't have access to those files, period, which is why there's a separate site being created for that. That's the reason earlier I said no. But the use cases are essentially, we have sensitive information. I don't want to have to create an extra team just for this, which I would rather deal with the sprawl than deal with the permissions, personally. That's my opinion. I think we've spent the last decade and a half complaining about SharePoint permissions being significantly too difficult to deal with. How do you manage them? You almost can't do it right without purchasing a third-party product to put on top of Office 365 or SharePoint on-prem. And that was the simplicity of bringing Teams into the mix, where it's, if you have access to the team, you have access to everything. And I thought that was a real nice improvement over years past. But came down to, I just want to talk about this one topic, but it's in this team because that's the team that that topic belongs. So I think those are the simplest use cases. There are plenty of others that you'll, I'm sure, run into. Once people find out about it, I'm sure you'll find plenty of use cases from their experience and what they want, but that's essentially where I've been seeing it. Let's see, okay, yep.
private channel to send or documents to it? Do you know what I mean? Can they?
Yeah, sure. So the private channels, I kind of wish I had my demo up. I can't put that one up right now. The private channel site will come through into Teams. So you will see the Files tab, just like you would in any other one. So you can upload files there. It'll just be protected and separated from what else is stored in the other site that the main parent team lives with. Is that what you're asking?
No. So if people aren't in the private channel,
Yeah.
and they, I guess, I don't know, not sure if you answered my question, but can they send it to folks that are in? I'm thinking, coming from higher ed, I'm thinking just another way to submit something.
Oh, I see.
So could they @mention, if I have to upload something to a faculty member, can they @mention that private channel and have it go to them? Do you know what I'm saying?
So the users that are not in the private channel, correct me if I'm wrong, cannot see the existence of the private channel. The owners can see that it exists, but they can't get in it unless they're members of the private channel.
So non-members of the private channel don't even know it's there.
Now it's
That's boring.
just like a SharePoint. If you don't have access to a SharePoint folder, it's just not there. Yep. Yeah, a hidden channel. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah. Yes. Yes, you can. The channel does have an email address, just like any other channel. And if you have it, these channel email addresses, if you've never looked at them, I mean, they're just a bunch of gobbledygook, and you can't personalize them, which I know, causes a lot of consternation in some organizations. I feel like we have bigger problems to solve than that. But yeah, if you have it, that's going to happen. But that's just like having an API, ID to any other application, essentially. So. I don't think so, do you?
It depends on the option if you allow anybody outside the channels.
Okay, so I guess that's a feature. That's an option or a toggle that you can choose. I didn't know that, actually. I just thought if the email address got out, you're stuck. Guess not. Any other questions? All right. So this is probably what you're waiting for, is the resources. Everybody's phone's going to come out now. The first one is this book, so feel free to grab this and use it as you'd like. I also have a central listing of Teams resources, super meta. A list of places to read up on some of the topics, people to follow, both at Microsoft and in the community. I also want to give a shout out to Melissa Hubbard. She's also here speaking, and she has a great governance guide that she put together. I think she did this with Jared Matfis out of Slalom, and just really, really good. I'm not going to recreate the wheel on that one. They just do too well. If you're new to Microsoft Teams, that bottom left one is the Teams demo, and it's a really good interactive tool that shows you how Teams work. So if you want to try to sell the concept to people that haven't seen it yet, have them check this out. It takes 5 minutes. All you got to do is give your name, make it up, doesn't even matter. I wish every application in Office had this setup. It's really, really good. Check it out. And then I have an infographic out there at the top right, keeping up to date with Office 365 changes. It is not the solution that you're looking for. It is a list of resources that can help you get to that endpoint. I can't do this my day job. But that is a lot of what we're going to talk about on Friday morning at the non-conference session. I also have an entire spreadsheet of the feedback mechanism, the official blog, and the official Twitter handle, people to follow, just a whole bunch of stuff broken down by application in Office 365. And if you remember that periodic table, there's like 20 plus applications. So we're not just talking about Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and OneNote, right? The roadmap is also key to watch. That being said, any roadmap from Microsoft is as good as it is on the day that it gets rolled out into your admin center, so best of luck. The feedback mechanism is going to be user voice, and they are very responsive to that. They really, really are. I give them a lot of credit. And then the blog as well. So I think that's as much as I've got for today. And I do want to remind you, please, 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 please evaluate. Provide feedback, not just for me, but for everybody. This helps out the speakers so much. It also provides the conference runners a good idea. So if I was really bad today, they should know not to host me here again next year. If I was really good, maybe I do come back next year. We'll see. But take the time to do that. And I thank you all very much. Have a great rest of your Microsoft Ignite. And if you would like to, feel free to stop me, say hi anytime, and I would be happy to gaggle afterwards if you'd like. I'm just going to go that way so the next speaker can have some time to get set up here. Okay? Thanks.